Welcome to episode 30 of the ChooseFI radio podcast. Today, we're going to be interviewing Alan Donegan from PopUp Business School out of the UK. The same way that the FI community has turned personal finance on its head, Alan is doing this with the side hustle, and I could not be more thrilled to introduce you to what I'm calling the unspoken lover of the FI community. Your side hustle might start today. Welcome to the show.
You're listening to ChooseFI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. ChooseFI, your home for financial independence online.
Okay, guys, so let's go ahead and get this thing going. I have Brad here with me in the studio, and also I have Alan joining us from the UK. Hi, Alan. How are you doing today?
Excellent. The sun is shining in England, and life is good.
Oh, you guys get like 2 or 3 days of sunshine a year, so that's amazing. Have you bought your lottery ticket yet?
I think I need to.
So you just got back from Texas, and I think they overfed you from what I was seeing.
The pancakes were insanely big. I think I need to go on a diet after the number of pancakes and maple syrup I had.
Everything's bigger in Texas, right?
Everything's bigger in Texas, including the barbecue food, which was amazing.
So, yeah, you were the first one to call us out on failing to discuss the side hustle on our Pillars of FI episode. And Brad and I felt duly called out, and we wanted to address this.
Yeah, so I think what I saw from the Pillars of FI, which was really interesting, I love that episode, is you've kind of got three main angles. You've got increase your income, decrease your spending, which gives you the gap in between that you invest, and then it's getting the best returns from the investment. And I think there was an awful lot of focus on the reduce the spending, which there should be, because it's such a critical element. There's a lot of focus on how do we invest for the long term, but there wasn't much focus on, is there a way to increase your income to get there faster, or even reduce your expenses by bringing in some money from a side hustle, which can get you to FI a lot faster.
Yeah, and I think that deepens the message. I think it's one that a lot of other personal finance shows really, they just don't go there. It's very one-dimensional. And I love that you're going to be able to help us with this because it is so valuable. And we have people in wildly different income brackets going from anywhere from $500,000 a year down to maybe less than $20,000 a year. And the tools or the levers that they're going to rely on is different. And I think that by taking a period of time to talk about this vehicle that's so powerful, it really does expand the message and give people options that maybe they hadn't considered.
And I think it's great that you have all these different levers. And I love that explanation of what it is, because I think you start off with the basic ones and you reduce the mobile phone bill, you reduce the satellite bill for the television, you kind of pull these different levers. And once you've done that, you've got some space to think about what else can I pull? And I think this is one of the ones that you can get onto a little bit later that can add a whole new level of depth.
And Jonathan and I certainly have firsthand experience with this, right? Just very simply with ChooseFI, and for me with my other website that I've started in the last handful of years, that we have formed something just very recently that ChooseFI literally did not exist 6 months ago. And now it's this podcast that tens of thousands of people are listening to. So, and we did it with minimal amounts of money and just hard work, mostly from Jonathan on learning how to podcast and learning how to create a website. So, I mean, if we can do it just from scratch, there are many, many thousands of people listening to this who can do the same, and they can find something that actually interests them, right? Because you hear so many times the cautionary tale. It seems like in FI, everybody's running from something. They're running from a job that they dislike. But I think, Alan, you would argue that you can run to something. You can run to something that you have a passion for.
And I think that I found that really interesting in the Ecuador Chautauqua, which I went to last November, was that a lot of people were moving away from work, but they've not figured out entirely what they were moving towards. And one of Brandon, the mad scientist, said was that if you think you're just going to read more books in retirement, you're going to get bored very quickly. You need to have something to do afterwards.
Yeah, and that's a real existential issue, right? I mean, this is truly what we want to do with our lives. So as you so appropriately said there, you can't read books and exercise and take walks and think that's going to be a fully satisfied life, let's say. You need to find something to do that maybe impacts the world in some way or benefits someone. And to me, that's been, from my perspective at least, the biggest benefit of ChooseFI psychologically. That I know that even though at the end of the day, it's just me and Jonathan talking to ourselves, we're actually impacting the world in some way. And that's a very satisfying thing psychologically.
And that was part of the fascinating bit we got out of the Ecuador Chautauqua, was that actually we went there for financial investing advice, but neither Brandon, the mad scientist, or Mr. Money Mustache, Pete, gave us that. Pete's talk was about happiness. And two of the elements he spoke about were learning and growth. So you're learning something, you're growing, and having a purpose. And that's a big part of happiness. And really what we're trying to do is use our money to buy long-term happiness.
I think that's a parallel way of saying, if you're just using your money just to buy stuff, it's so short-sighted. There's no there. But if you use it to buy freedom and by extension happiness, now that's a conversation worth having.
Absolutely. And I know where I want to put my money.
Agreed entirely. And it's not buying happiness as much as buying the freedom to pursue that happiness. And I think that really is this framework question that a lot of us are grappling with. And it's almost, not to play this up, but it's the meaning of life. What makes you happy and how can you benefit the world and by extension yourself? So this is a fascinating and far-reaching conversation for sure. And I'm very excited to dive into it with Alan here.
We've gone deep quickly, Brad.
Yeah, we sure have. So Alan, if you don't mind, just give us a little background about yourself. How did you get into FI? How did you get into creating PopUp Business School? Where did you get the skills to not only create businesses, but to teach people how to do so? I just love to learn more about you.
So how did I get into FI? I started studying some of the Robert Kiyosaki early stuff, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which was about buying assets as opposed to buying liabilities. And I'd never owned an asset before. And the example they use is property. It's a fairly easy one to get your head around. So my big focus through that was about buying an asset through property. That led us to a book by Tony Robbins, which was Money, Master the Game, which was fascinating about how to invest, mainly in index funds. And that changed my perspective, which then led us to Pete's blog, Mr. Money Mustache, and an English blog called The Escape Artist, who we went and met. He lives nearby us and he gave us a little bit of coaching. And that sort of led us down this path towards index investing. And that was it. My wife and I were hooked on the journey, and together we are away. We're on it. So that's the kind of FI journey. We're probably 18 months away from our FI target, and we're working together towards that. It's going really well. I'll be 40 almost to the day by the day we reach it. My wife will be 34, which I'm impressed, although she feels like she's behind the curve because Pete achieved it by the time he was 30.
Yeah, because if you're not first, you're last.
Exactly. So that's kind of how I've landed at this FI path that I've been working on. And sort of a completely separate path was this business thing. I got fired by my last proper employer for a rather silly mistake that I'm not allowed to tell anyone about. And I looked for a new job, but couldn't find anything that really excited me. And then you're left thinking, well, what do I do? There's no jobs that really excite me. There's not that much money. And I'd been on a few training courses that had changed my life. So I decided I wanted to then share that with other people. So I built this training business originally to train corporate organizations. And I went for support from a government body. There was a government body in England called Business Link that gave out support for people who wanted to start a business. And they gave you 3 basic workshops: how to write a business plan, finance and control, and marketing. And this government body did more to scare me off ever starting than it did to actually help me. So me being me, I didn't take it lying down. I contacted the person in central government in England who funded the whole program and told him what I thought of it, which went down interestingly. He rang me. We had a good chat. I told him that the business plan didn't help me to make any progress and that I didn't want to go into debt. I'd seen my dad go bankrupt for a lot of money and I did not want to repeat those mistakes. And he sent this guy, Simon, to come and fix my problems. And Simon has ended up leaving Business Link, becoming my business partner. And we set up PopUp Business School to do what we believe that these government organizations fail to do, which is actually to help people start businesses and make money doing what they love.
I want to pause you there just to focus on this almost preconceived notion that in order to start a business, you need to go heavily into debt. You have to spend money to make money.
Exactly. That's the belief that's out there. It takes money to make money. You've got to spend money before you get it back. It's this big belief. And I think it's perpetuated by shows like The Apprentice and Shark Tank and Dragon's Lion's Den, where you need to talk about financing and business plans, and the universities, the colleges, they all teach that way of doing business. But it's not true. It's not true at all. You can start a business for nothing. I've seen restaurants built for free. I've seen physical businesses with bricks and mortars built for free. I've seen websites and online businesses built for free. In fact, I haven't found a single business yet that you can't start for free, earn the money, and then invest it later.
Alan, that's absolutely fascinating. I'd love to know, how do you start a restaurant for free? Just if you could give me like a 1-minute synopsis of that, because I'm sure there are people out there saying, oh, but I heard it costs $500,000 or $1 million to start a restaurant. And you hear those tales of these restaurants going out of business all the time. Talk me through that real quick, if you don't mind.
Well, Brad, that's the most dangerous way to do it. Because if you imagine you borrow $500,000, you get yourself a building, you deck it out, you buy all the equipment, you open the doors, and then you hope customers turn up.
If you build it, they will come?
That's the biggest lie out there. If you build it, no one will come until you market it and sell it. And I've seen people build websites and then wonder why no one turns up. They build shops and wonder why no one turns up. It's because they don't know about it. The Field of Dreams didn't quite have that one right. So for the restaurant, the other way of doing it, there was a guy in London who wanted to start his restaurant. He didn't have any cash. What he found was he found a local cafe. And actually, I came across one of these in Dallas the other day. There was a local cafe that was open 7 a.m. till about 4 p.m. They did the breakfast slot. They did the lunch slot. The owners were tired. They didn't want to do the evening slot. They were doing fine as it is. So this particular guy in London made friends with the owner of the cafe. You need trust for this to work, so you've got to build a relationship. He then basically did a deal whereby he could run a week-long pop-up in the evenings as an experiment to see if it would work. And the owner of the cafe gets 50% of the profits. He gets 50% of the profits, and he can test his idea for free. His stroke of genius was that he then went out and pre-sold the tickets to his pop-up event, which people will pay up front to go to something like that. So he'd got all the cash and the profit in before he'd even run the event. The event was huge success. It rolled into a second week, a third week. He ended up running the restaurants in the evening there for 2 years whilst he built up the cash to buy his own restaurant and invest from the sales he'd made rather than from debt. So he built his business on profit rather than debt.
Wow, I have chills down my spine. That is so cool. And that is something that if I hadn't just heard you share that story, I would have never considered that that was even a possibility. It wouldn't even have occurred to me. And we talk about the power of having somebody model something for you. What if you could have thousands of these really clever ideas on how to start something up, and you'd actually seen people do it and it work? How empowering is that? And you're kind of a funnel for all these ideas now that you have not only seen other people do, but now you're able to share these with people that are looking to do something similar that could benefit from that information.
Absolutely. And I'm not always the originator of all the ideas. Quite often people come to us and they say, I've tried this, it did work or it didn't work. And 7 years of traveling around England, meeting some of the most entrepreneurial people, the examples, the stories, the tales, the ways to start things that are non-traditional are incredible.
Yeah, and that strikes me with 2 points that we talk about here often, which is looking at a problem differently, right? So if everybody says, quote unquote, everybody says, you need $1 million to start a restaurant, well, that's the normal paradigm. But this person that you know just looked at the problem differently. And not only that, but what you had embedded in there was networking. And that's not in the contrived manner, but in a genuine human connection, because this person had to have trust and faith with that cafe owner before they would let him start this up. Right? I mean, they're not just going to let somebody off the street do this. So to me, I'm constantly talking about the power of genuine human connection and how even in this digital age, even in this wired world, just making genuine friends and relationships matters more than, to me, just about anything. I can bring back almost all of my success to the relationships that I have.
The more digital the world goes, the more important the physical relationships are.
Yeah, there is no question in my mind that that is absolutely true. And yeah, hopefully everyone listening is really taking this in. This is not just about having 1,000 friends on Facebook. This is not about having 50 likes on a post. It's about having real people that you can rely on and you trust, and that you add value to their lives and they add value to your life. So that's just a complete sidebar here, but I think an important one.
So it sounds like you and Simon were able to create this vehicle using the tools that you just mentioned to really start this amazing concept, this pop-up business school. And so what I would really like to get out of this is kind of go through the framework that you built Pop-Up Business School around. What are the questions and ideas that we should be considering when really thinking about whether or not a side hustle should be a realistic part of our FI plan?
So I think one of the questions we've asked everywhere we've gone, and I've asked this different countries all around the UK to thousands and thousands of people over the last few years, is what stops you from starting a business? What stops you from getting going? What stops you from making money? And fairly ubiquitously, there's the same answers that come up. Do you know what the top one is, Brad, Jonathan?
I don't have an idea would be probably something I would think people would say.
And I don't have the money.
And I don't have the money. Actually, quite a few people have the ideas. They know they want to make food or do this or sell their crochet work or they want to start a photography business. Quite a lot of people have ideas. Some don't, but we can come to how you can overcome that. The number one thing that people say is that it takes money to make money. I don't have the cash. I don't have the finance. That's the number one thing that stops people, which is why at the Pop-Up Business School courses, we spend the entire first day on how do you start a business for free. And I'll give you an overview of the 5 ways you can build a business without spending any money in a minute. The second one is confidence. It's the confidence that your idea will work. And the opposite of that is that you're scared that it will fail. And if you're borrowing a lot of money, then it does become very scary. Whereas if you can start for free, it doesn't feel like you're taking as big a risk and you feel more confident about it.
Wow, that's very powerful. I'm thinking back to when I started ChooseFI with Brad. There was no risk. It was a side hustle. I was doing it from the safety of a 9-to-5, using my spare time that originally I was just using watching Seinfeld reruns. And then I just redirected that into starting something. And if you know what, if nobody listened or nobody cared, I'm going back to my 9-to-5. There was very little risk just to get this thing going. And that did give me the confidence to really go at it 100%.
Absolutely. And if you've got some confidence because there's not much risk, people tend to just throw in and have a go at it. And I love that.
And Brad went down this path a few years ahead of me, and I believe he has a similar story. Right, Brad?
I have been creating websites for the last 7 years, even though I knew nothing and I was sitting in a tax accountant's office for years and failed miserably for years and years and years, but it cost nothing. And I learned skills along the way that enabled my success with the other 3 websites. So this is a very personal story for me, that hearing what Alan's describing is something that I lived through. That this was something that I've done for years for essentially $0. And there was no risk other than my time. But I looked at it as more or less a free MBA, let's say, right? I was getting an MBA in entrepreneurship and online business just by spending my time and researching as many things as I could and trying to pick up skills from all these different sources. And sometimes I wasn't even sure where it was going to go, honestly. And it's enabled me to put together these ideas in my head, and with like my website, Richmond Savers, for instance, where I kind of had this idea to create a hybrid online and real world business where I actually literally got on the phone with people to help them with their travel rewards and help them travel for free. And that was kind of like just this random idea that I put together using a background as an accountant and a website owner. So anyway, long story short is I think picking up skills and doing it with little risk is essential. And I know personally I've benefited from it enormously.
Yeah, and if you learn with no risk, once you've had the experience, you can throw all in at the next level. If you throw all in at the start, it's massive risk. So learn without the risk, and then when you're ready, you can go all in. And the third thing that stops people from getting going, or the third main thing, is knowing what to do on a day-to-day basis. And I've always found this fascinating. People turn up to the Pop-Up Business School with a business plan they've written somewhere else, and they come over to me and they go, Alan, I've got my business plan. What do I actually do? And knowing what to do, because as an entrepreneur on a Monday morning, you've got to make this stuff up. There's no boss telling you what to do. There's no one prompting you. You've got to make it up and you've got to know what to do. So working out where the best investment of your time is and what actions you need to take to grow your business. So those are the 3 main things that stop people from getting going.
That is so powerful, Alan. I love how you piece this together, and I'm super excited to see how all these tools that you've been accumulating over the last, how long have you been doing this? 5 years? years now?
I think 6 or 7.
Amazing. I'm excited to see how these all come together. So what comes next?
So let me give you 5 ways that you can start a business for free with zero risk. And the reason I want to do this is because, well, just have a go. See what happens. You learn amazing things. You make friends online. It's incredible. So if I can teach you how to start for free, there's nothing stopping you having a go and testing it out. And that's what I really want, is for you to have some tools that you can use tomorrow. So 5 ways to start for free. Number 1 is, what can you get for free? It is incredible what you can get for free when you are starting your business. Absolutely incredible. You can build a website for free. There's quite a few out there now. The one we actually built the PopUp Business School website on is called Weebly, weebly.com. You can build a free website on there. And if you can build a free website and start marketing it, you can get it out there quickly. You can use Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook to a certain extent, although it's becoming more difficult to do it for free on Facebook. But Twitter, you can use it for free to find your audience. There are incredible online tools that will allow you to sell for free. And I think where this really hit home for me was, there's a book called Get Free Stuff Every Day by a guy called Mike Essex in England. And it's a fascinating little book. He was, I think, 15 years old, and he decided he wanted to get computer games for free. So he created a website and then wrote off to computer game manufacturers and said, I will put a review online of your game if you send it to me.
Nice.
Computer game manufacturers started to send him lots of games. And by the end of the year, I think he'd had 500 to 600 games. He was the most popular kid in school, and he didn't know what to do with them all. And then he started to expand from there to see what he could get for free. And so I'd love to give your audience, Brad and Jonathan, a little bit of homework. I know that's not normal, but what I'd love them to do is go to Google and type in, how do I get, and then whatever it is, for free. How do I get business cards for free? How do I get a shop for free? How do I get a restaurant for free? How do I get whatever it is you need to get going? Start searching for it. It is incredible what you can get for free.
Yeah, that's really cool, Alan. I love that. And while we don't generally ask for homework, we do look for actionable steps, right? And the essential part of starting a business is actually taking action. People, to your point earlier, people might have ideas, they might brainstorm things, but how many people actually get up off the couch and do something? So to everyone out there, take Alan's advice and do this. Actually do it. And then get back to us. We have this Facebook group now with almost 1,000 members in it that you can join at ChooseFI.com/Facebook, and let us know what you found. What did you find for free that Alan tasked you with? Alan is in that group, so you can speak with him directly.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Stories like the one that you just shared, that single story about how one guy looked at a problem. I want free video games. And I can't imagine a less consequential problem that you don't have to even find an answer to that. It doesn't really affect your life in any way. But just because you were willing to take this principle and apply it to that and be just a little bit creative, just think a little bit outside the box, he was able to get 500 free video games. Now, when you take that principle and you apply it to every other problem that you face in this world, the doors that will unlock will be truly life-changing at every level.
Absolutely. And a different way of looking at things, a different action will get you different results. And that's what we're really after, is different to the normal results. So that's number 1, get stuff for free. Number 2 is, what can you borrow? What can you borrow? And the thing that fascinates me is that at the moment, there are unbelievable resources lying about us that aren't used all the time. There's kit in universities that only gets used during term time. We had a music artist who needed a recording studio to record her album. Well, not only was she able to borrow an entire recording studio from a university, they also supplied her with students that needed work experience to master the music for her. So it's unbelievable what you can borrow. You could borrow a gift shop. Gift shops are looking for new products to bring new people in. We have an example actually of, there was a couple of young guys from a place called Portsmouth in the south of England who wanted to start a minivan rental business. That's what they wanted to do. They came to us for advice. They arrived with a business plan and they wanted to borrow £33,000 to start their business, to buy 2 second-hand minibuses and to get going. It was okay though. They'd worked out where to borrow the money from. They'd saved 2 or 3 grand themselves, and then they were going to get a loan for the other 30 grand. but the bank wouldn't give them the loan for the 30 grand because one of them was unemployed at the time. The other one had a job, but one of them was unemployed. They wouldn't give them the loan without a guarantor. Do you know who was going to guarantee the loan?
No idea.
The parents. And do you know what they were putting up as collateral?
The house.
The house. So they put up the house as collateral. Now, for me, that's the riskiest thing you can do when starting a business. These two young lads had never run a business before. One of them didn't even have a driving license, and they were going to borrow 30 grand against their parents' house to start a business. Insanity. But people think you need to borrow money to start a business. So we sat down with them. We went through the business plan line by line, a bit like you do with the expenses lines in people's budgets. We went through and go, okay, do you need a website? No, you can get one for free. Do you need an office? No, you can work from home or the garage. Do you need business cards? No, here's how you can get them for free. The one we got stuck on a little bit was the vans, because you think to start a minibus rental company, you need a van. Mm-hmm. It's kind of useful. So what we actually did there was we paused and said, do you know anyone who's got a minibus? And the response for these two young guys was, well, actually, yes, we do. That's where the idea has come from. One of our friends has a minibus that he's a taxi driver. He has a taxi and a minibus, and he uses them interchangeably through the week for his work. And we saw that minibus and thought it'd be great to rent it out at weekends to sports teams. So the next question was, do you think you could borrow it?
Seems logical.
Yeah, why not? And they were friends of the family, so they knew him. He didn't use it at the weekends, and these two wanted to rent it out at the weekends specifically for sport teams. So they were able to borrow the van to do a test, and then they shared the profit with who they were borrowing the van from. Just a different way of starting. We actually took their budget down from £33,000 to they needed £300 to start the business. And the only thing we needed £300 was to get the driving license for one of them. I couldn't find a way round getting a driving license.
Well, gosh, if you were really good at your job, you could have figured that out too.
Come on, Alan. You only knocked off 99%. You couldn't get it down to zero.
Amateur hour.
Need to work harder.
The minibus owner who didn't have a driver's license. That's your impediment.
I love every aspect of this because I can visualize that you have had thousands of these stories and you looked at it from the same traditional business model as the bank and said, well, you know what? You're not a good risk. You're going to need your parents to sign off as guarantors. You're going to need to put up the house as collateral. That is a traditional model. And you flip that on its head and you've empowered these people that just have an idea. You're helping them turn it into a reality by looking at the problem just a little bit differently. By doing what we're doing with finances, you're doing it with business models.
Yes. And if you look at the traditional way of starting a business, you work out how much money you need to borrow by writing a business plan. Once you've written a business plan and worked out how much money you need to borrow, you set up your corporation and then you go for a loan. You borrow a lot of money, you get into debt, you spend all the money, and then maybe you make money in year 2. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not really up for waiting for 2 years and taking a lot of debt to start my business. So what we thought, and a bit like you with looking at problems differently, our expression at the PopUp Business School is, will the opposite work? So the exact opposite of the traditional model of starting a business. The traditional model ends with sales. You write a business plan, you borrow loads of money, you spend the money, then you sell. So what if we were to do the opposite and we were to start with sales? So instead of borrowing any money, business plans or anything, let's test your idea immediately. Because what's the only way you will know if your business idea will work or not? What's the only way?
Is anybody going to buy?
Yeah, it's actually, does anyone buy? And what most people do when they're launching their business is they go to their friends and family with their new idea. So let's imagine I came to you, Jonathan, Brad, with my new idea. I was going to do a custom printed mobile phone case, for example. I came to you, I showed it to you, and I said, what do you think, friends?
We would invariably say, oh, it looks nice.
That's cute.
Exactly. Yeah, that's cute. That looks nice. Is that good feedback?
Not at all.
No. What you should do at that point is lean in and go, Brad, Jonathan, it's $20. Would you like to buy one?
Yeah.
And then watch their face change. That is the only real reaction. The only time you get an honest response from someone is when you ask them to take their wallet their dollars out of their pocket. Up until that point, they will be nice to you. If you ask for the sale, you'll get the real response. And if you ask for the sale before you go into debt, you can start your business without risk. Because if they say yes, you're going, you've got an order, your business is running. If they say no, you've lost nothing. So one of our biggest pieces of advice is start with sales rather than starting with debt.
That's really cool. And that strikes me, that is kind of the idea behind a Kickstarter. That's what they've done. They've crowdsourced that out, where basically you present an idea. Would you buy this?
Absolutely. Let's jump forward to number 5, which is, I guess, the biggest one of my 5 ways to start for free. I'd love your audience to get. And we word it this way. It is sell your value before you create it. Sell your value before you create it. And that's what Kickstarters do. They sell the value of the product before they build the product. And if you like the idea, you pay them up front, then they make it. You see music artists doing this now. They'll give you a sample and they'll say, I'll make the full album if you pay me to do it. You see writers doing this. They sell the idea first, where get the money, then they write the book. The traditional way to do it is spend 5 years of your life writing a book, and then maybe people will buy it afterwards.
Wow, Alan, that is a completely different way of looking at a problem. And I'm sure that you have seen so many examples of people making this very unconventional choice and applying that to business models. How do people take this concept and actually take action, apply it? Do you have any examples you want to share with us?
On the very first ever pop-up business school in Weston-super-Mare, we had a guy called Dennis coming along. Dennis was a recovering alcoholic and drugs addict. He'd got himself clean. He'd got a food hygiene certificate, and his dream was to open a cafe, but he was stuck because he couldn't get the cash to buy the cafe to start his business. So we looked at him and said, Dennis, there's 50 people on this training course. They all need lunch every day. Could you sell them lunch tomorrow? What's your speciality dish, Dennis? And Dennis said his speciality was lasagna. So we said, well, go and sell it. See if someone will buy it. So we went running around the room and he was selling his lasagna to other participants. 22 of them said yes to a £4 lunch the next day. When he came back over to us, he looked downtrodden, sad and upset. And I didn't get it. Dennis, you've just sold 22 lunches. That's £88. Why do you look sad? And he said, well, the reason I look sad is because I'm still in the same position now as I was before. I don't have the money to buy the ingredients for lasagna, to buy the baking tray, to make the lasagna, to bring it in the next day, to be able to sell it, to get the cash. And he looked defeated. So I said, well, Dennis, could you ask for the money up front? And he had this perplexed look on his face, like, can you do that? I didn't realise. And for some reason, I think a lot of people starting small businesses think they need to do everything first and then ask for the money second. But that's not always the case. If you can build trust, you can ask for the money first. So Dennis went running around the room saying, would you mind if I had the £4 today so that I can buy the ingredients to make the lasagna to bring it in for you tomorrow? Everyone said yes. He came back to us with the biggest smile on his face I've ever seen, and he had £88 in his hands. We were a little bit worried that was the last we would ever see of Dennis. But luckily, he came back in the next day with a giant tray of lasagna, some garlic bread and some salad. He served everyone food. They enjoyed it. He repeated the same the next day. And in 3 days, he'd made himself £150, which is about $220. And the change from I was stuck, I have no way to get forwards, to I've pre-sold what I'm doing and I've made money, the confidence and the self-belief was unbelievable. You saw the restaurant owner that sold tickets to his pop-up event before the pop-up event happened. The pop-up business school itself, my own business. I went to see Michael Williams from Alliance Homes in Weston-super-Mare about 6 or 7 years ago. And how much of this 2-week course that I deliver called the Pop-Up Business School do you think I had written before I sold it to Michael Williams?
Oh, 100% of it. Too high?
Slightly too high. I'd written none of the course. All I had was an idea. And I thought, why do I want to waste my time writing the entire course if it's a no-goer? Let me see if I can sell it first. So I pitched the idea. Michael really liked the idea. He said, send me some details, send me a proposal. I sent him a proposal. He bought it there and then. He bought the 2-week course. My next question was, what dates would you like the course to run? We sorted the dates. And then I said, to secure the dates, can you pay me in advance? And he looked a bit confused to start with. He scratched his head and then eventually said, well, I need to get the money out of the budget. I'm happy to pay you in advance to do the course.
That was the longest breath ever, right?
It was, yeah. That's one of those moments in business where you know you've got to stay silent. He said yes. So the money was in my bank account 6 months before I'd ever run the course. So I would never create a course and waste my time doing it until I've sold it and I know there's a need. And it doesn't matter what your business is, there is a way to pre-sell what you're doing, whether it's on Kickstarter, whether it's in person, whether it's through a ticketing event. There is always a way to pre-sell.
Alan, what's interesting is this is directly applicable to my life and my business, actually. And I don't think I've mentioned this before, but my website, Travel Miles 101, where I basically offer what we call a free course, a free travel rewards course. We did something almost identical where, though we aren't charging for it, so it's slightly different, but the concept is very similar in that we marketed this course before we had written one word of it. And it was just an idea that my co-founder Alexi and I had decided on. We thought there would be interest, especially in the FI world. We actually posted this in the Mr. Money Mustache forum. And hey, we're putting together this course. I think we, for some reason, limited it to 200 people that first month or some such, and it filled up within 48 hours. And it was incredible. So, I mean, it was proof of concept right there that people are interested in this, they're crying out for this information. And Alexi and I went about furiously creating this course and almost in real time, to the point where we were dripping out a piece of content every single day to this email list of 200 people. I mean, I was writing it as of 10 o'clock the night before. I mean, that's how down to the wire this was. And incredibly, it's 2.5 years later, that course is substantially similar, and we've now put 23,000 people through it.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, that's from using your idea unwittingly in this sense. You know, we put it out there, we proved out that people wanted it, and you know, the rest is history.
And if no one had signed up, then you've not spent years developing a course that no one wants.
Right.
You can then try another idea.
That's exactly right. I mean, we didn't spend anything on it. We didn't, to your point, it wasn't, oh, let's go out and make this as pretty as we can and get some web designer to make this beautiful course that costs thousands of dollars. I mean, it was just our words, essentially, and some videos. And okay, we proved it out and we created it. It was that simple. So yeah, I love this idea.
Awesome. Awesome. So that was number 5. Would you like number 3 and number 4 for completion?
Of course we would.
You don't have to. So number 3 is, instead of using money, could you barter? And I think this actually applies to all of your audience in every area, not just starting up side hustles or building businesses, is instead of spending money, what can you barter? And bartering is the idea. I mean, back in the old days before cash, if Jonathan had chickens and Brad had corn and I had bacon, we'd all just swap them instead of having money as a medium. So in the early days of starting up my business, I had no money and I didn't really understand marketing, so I needed help. So what I did was find a marketing company that needed staff training, and I swapped my training for their marketing support. So they designed a flyer for me, they helped me build a website and do stuff like that, and I ran training sessions for their staff on how to present and communicate.
Alan, we're always looking for actionable tips. And maybe this is my own mental weaknesses, but I'm an introvert by nature. And to me, the thought of before, like you were talking about borrowing stuff and now bartering, like that gets my palms sweaty. You know, like how would you tell the audience or give them actionable tips? How did the person you mentioned before who got that studio at the university for free, how did they go about doing that? Like, what do you suggest they actually do to make that approach?
So the actionable tip on this is it's about making friends with people, which if you're an introvert, you're going to have to make friends somehow. You can use online tools to reach out to make it more comfortable. So who can you connect with on Twitter to find the right people? Can you use LinkedIn? Can you even just ask on Facebook the people you already know, does anyone know X? And it's amazing what you can find by asking. I think just people don't ask for what they want and they're nervous about asking for stuff. But it's incredible what you can get. Now, there are some tips on building confidence as an introvert to be able to go out there and ask for what you want. There are ways to do that. I think the number one is making friends. You've got to go out there and make friends with people. And what I do when I'm making new connections is I focus on what I can give first before I ask for what I want. And I will always focus on adding value, making friends, having fun first. And then maybe there's a second bit where I say, can you help me with this? But if you focus on giving first, it makes it a lot more comfortable. If you just focus on what you can get, it becomes a lot more uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I actually heard this framed slightly differently on an episode of the Smart Passive Income podcast where Pat Flynn was interviewing the host from Art of Charm, Jordan Harbinger. And on that episode, Jordan gave this great tip about when he goes into a social interaction, his goal is to always be giving, ABG. That's how he presents himself. When he's meeting a stranger or when he's networking, he's looking for a way to help that person or add value. This is a complete switch on the traditional model, which was ABC, always be closing, which is what they use in the sales world. And that's another unconventional way of looking at a problem. It puts you in a different mindset, a different framework. It puts you in a better state of mind. It's very difficult to be rejected when you're trying to help somebody, or at least mentally when that's how you view it. You're trying to offer somebody aid in some way. What sort of crazy person says no to that? Whereas if you're starting a conversation asking for something, you can absolutely be rejected.
So let me give you a real practical example that hopefully people will be able to apply to their own world. My business, there's 8 of us within the business now. We all work from home or from cafes or different places so that we don't spend any money on offices. All of us except one of my members of team called Henry, who has his own office with glass elevators, free coffee, free Wi-Fi, attractive people swanning around the building. I mean, it's amazing what he's got. And the way he did that, he was at his local pub, and you could insert coffee shop for that. You could insert other place where you can talk to people. He made friends with one of the people there who owned a business, and he actually just asked, you've got an office in Basingstoke, haven't you? Would you mind if I borrowed it every now and again? Because I'm frustrated with working from home and I find it difficult. The guy looked a bit confused, and he actually said, why would I lend you an office? Why would I give you space in my office? And Henry said, well, what I could do, I'm really good at building websites. I could build a website for you, or I could help you with your social media. And the other guy immediately latched on, I'm actually starting a new business. I need a website for it. That sounds great. So what Henry did was swap the skill he had, which was building websites, for something that someone else has. And every one of your listeners has an incredible skill that they think is easy that other people don't have. We all have skills and different things that we can swap. And each one of your listeners has things that they can swap for what they want without spending any money.
That is incredibly valuable. I can't tell you all the little things that you're saying along the way that I'm just kind of taking and putting in my back pocket in case I need it. Like, for instance, I knew nothing about websites going into 2015, 2016, and I've learned an incredible amount of websites. Now, to a website designer, I'm sure I look like an amateur, but to your everyday guy on the street, I know way more than most people. And so I have this skill in my back pocket. Is that something that I could barter at some point down the road if I were to need that? Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. You could also barter the skill of creating podcasts. Mm-hmm. Like, you have that skill. You've invested your time and energy learning it. There's other people out there who want to learn that and want to do it, and you could swap that for help on other things. The skills we build up throughout our lives are incredible. And every one of your listeners, even if it's making food or having a good recipe, or it doesn't matter what it is, you have skills and abilities that other people would desire to have, and you can swap it for what you need.
All right, man, hit me up with a final one. I love that we went through the numbers in unorthodox manner because everything we do is unorthodox, and that's what adds power. Give us number 4.
Number 4, sell stuff. Sometimes there is just a little bit of money you need to get going, such as the van dudes that need £300 to be able to get through the driving license. Sometimes there's a tiny amount of money you need to get going. And what we found is people have houses stuffed full of stuff. They have years of spendy culture. They have DVDs that they never watched. They have shelves full of books. They have stuff lying around their house. Sell it. Sell the stuff.
Wow. Check this out. There's an added benefit here. So we spend all this time convincing people that stuff and buying stuff is dumb. And then finally it comes to this point and we say all that stuff that you spent all that time purchasing that now you realize you get no value out of, you can still win with it in the FI mentality, because now that can be how you get this thing started for your side hustle. Look at that natural pivot.
Absolutely. It worked beautifully. I think it was about 2 years ago, you know, when you move into a house and the spare room gets all of the boxes that you don't know what to do with? Our spare room was cluttered with stuff. And about a couple of years ago, we had friends coming around to stay, so we had to get rid of it all. So I started selling it. I sold it on Amazon, I sold it on eBay, I sold it everywhere you could imagine. I turned the junk in the spare room, my old phones, my old board games from when I was a kid, DVDs, books. I made £1,000, which is about $1,200 out of random stuff in my spare room. And it is incredible what people have lying about in their house that they can just sell. And where this comes from is we had a lady on the Birmingham PopUp Business School called Esha who wanted to start a mobile beautician business. And she needed one of those like fold-out tables with the little head in the end where people could lie on them. And that was going to cost about £150, about $200. And we got to this slide and said, what have you got to sell? And she had a running machine in her spare room that she'd bought that she'd used once and then was just lying there as a clothes source. So we sold it online with her. She had the money for the table by the end of the week. She was trading by the next week. Sometimes it's difficult to find the £150 from your normal monthly money because you need to buy food and pay the rent and stuff. But if you can sell something you've got, that finds you the little bit of extra cash that you just need to tip it over the edge.
Yeah, Alan, I love that. And what's funny is I was actually going to ask you when you were going through selling your stuff and also getting free stuff and networking and this kind of thing. Like, I've had an idea for a business based on what I have in my own attic. And I have thousands of old like comic books and sports cards and little toys and things like this, all these collectibles that I collected as a kid. And they are just sitting up there languishing. And I don't have the effort or ability to sell these things, or the care really to sell these things, but I'd love to get rid of them. If I could find someone, and maybe this is a call for a business out there, because I'm sure there are many, many hundreds of thousands of people just like me who have this stuff. If there was someone who said to me, hey, Brad, I'll go through, I'll catalog everything, I'll put it on eBay, and we'll split the profits 50-50. I would do that in an absolute heartbeat. But I don't even know, and maybe, Alan, this is something you can answer or not. Like, is there a way that I could offer that to someone and almost try to start a business for them? Like, is that even something that's conceivable?
Absolutely. And I think, so the last example I have this, and this will tie in beautifully. We had a gentleman it was the South Kilburn Pop-Up Business School. He was homeless at the time he came. And when we're saying to sell stuff, he looked at us and said, I don't have any stuff. I have clothing and a bag with an iPad with a cracked screen, and that's my life. What we actually found with him was that he did have a friend who had a lot of stuff in his house. And what he was able to do was to do a deal with his friend who didn't have the time to sell it or the inclination, but wanted shot of it. He did a deal to split the profits 50-50, selling someone else's stuff, and that got him the money to get going. So there are people out there who are looking for this opportunity, and I bet you there is someone that you know, a young person who's got time. There's someone out there with the skills to use eBay that would love to do that, would make good money selling it, and then split the profits with you.
All right, my action step after this podcast is to actually do that, and I will report back to you, Alan, and the audience to give you my results after it happens.
Love that. And one of the things that you can do, and I think sometimes people forget to use the power of their network. And your network are the friends you know. One of the best tools to get an idea in front of your friends at the moment, if you're on Facebook, is to use Facebook. I would just put on Facebook, can anyone help me sell this stuff? And to give you an example, I had an idea that I wanted to pitch to Twitter a few months ago. So I put on Facebook, does anyone know anyone who works for Twitter? It's strange that I use Facebook to find someone for Twitter, but I did. And I got several replies. And one of my friends tagged one of his friends in and said, this guy works for Twitter, ask him. We had a conversation and it got me in front of Twitter to pitch my business idea. And I don't think audiences use their network enough. So just ask on Facebook, just put it out there. Can anyone help me?
I love this idea. Brad, I think what you've essentially decided to start is a crowdsourced consignment store, like a global consignment. Like you just created that. Sure, maybe someone else has gone for it, but you just moved that to a mega platform and you could totally execute on that and turn it into you could even franchise that thing.
I love that we're building businesses on the hoof together.
Absolutely. It's amazing though. Can I add on to that? It is amazing that once you have one idea, the rest of them start flowing and you go from a scenario where you're like, I don't have any ideas to then you can't shut it off. And then it's just a matter of which one you want to put your time and your energy into.
The energy comes when you start to take action and do stuff, and the ideas are flow, you get past it. The energy is unbelievable. And I think this week I've had the realization that I'm playing the game on a different level. On Monday, I was in Texas. On Tuesday, I was in London. On Wednesday, I was in Germany. And then I was back to England again afterwards. And jet lag hasn't even played in my consciousness because I've got the energy from having done stuff and things are happening. You just get such inspiration when you start to take action.
I had one follow-up question for you, Alan, that I know has come across many times. And I think it's just interesting to go ahead and talk about it just because we spend so much time talking about pursuing your passions and then the potential to monetize it. And I know that some people say if you monetize something that you're passionate about, if you monetize a hobby, then you're going to lose the enjoyment that you get out of that. And I think that that's a valid point, at least just to throw out there. I'd love to get your feedback because your entire career now, your side hustle is dedicated to helping people monetize their ideas.
And I love comments like that in the group that challenge the ideas and we can share ideas. I think that's fantastic. What we have found over the 6-7 years of doing Pop-Up Business School, what we have found is that the people who start a business because they think they can make money doing something don't tend to last. The money motivation wears off. They don't continue to enjoy it and they stop. What we found is that the people who start a business because it's what they love to do, they continue to do it. And it gives you motivation, it gives you energy, and it doesn't feel like work. And one of the worst feelings in the world is when you've got that Sunday night, I don't want to go back to the office the next day. And one of the best feelings in the world is when you've got that Sunday night, I've loved my weekend, but I'm pumped about Monday.
Yeah.
And if you can build a business around what you enjoy doing, it doesn't feel like work. And that, I think, is the bit. If it doesn't feel like a chore, you'll want to keep doing it. People will love you doing it for them, and it will continue. And I don't care whether that's baking cakes, flying drones, making food, doing a podcast. It doesn't matter what it is. There is a way to make money doing what you love if you're willing to spend time exploring it and have fun with it.
And I think that is the position that I find myself in. So ChooseFI is probably a 30 to 50 hour a week deal for me right now. It does not feel like work. It is something that I am extraordinarily passionate about. And because I have taken steps to reduce my lifestyle, to reduce my cost, and basically be able to support my family. It doesn't cost as much. It's very low risk. I can now pursue ChooseFI with the passion of somebody that doesn't need to worry about how the lights are going to be kept on tomorrow. And I love doing it. So working 40 hours a week on ChooseFI is a dream. And every Monday I go into it saying, finally, the work that I put in is now going to be put on display for the public. And I'm proud of it. I'm excited to share it. And I think that's where Brad lands as well with this business and with his other businesses. Right, Brad?
Yeah, no question about it. It is not work when you're A, doing something you love, and B, in our case, really helping people and making a difference in people's lives. And the psychological satisfaction of that, I just cannot overstate that. So it's a remarkable feeling.
Alan, you obviously tell a very compelling story just for the general public at large. I think there's some things that make this particularly appealing to people in our community, which is one of the reasons we're so desperate to have this conversation with you. In my view, there's three different scenarios, and the people that are in our community, that the way that they are going to take this information and the way that they can use it. The first scenario is you need to increase your income just to get some space. So you're either minimum wage or you're making sub $30,000 a year, and you want to increase your savings rate because you realize the power of being able to do that, but there's not room for upward mobility in your current working environment. A side hustle gives you the ability to create the space. The second scenario that to me is super powerful and is appealing to me at a very personal level is that it is a shortcut to FI. If I am on this path, I've achieved a high savings rate and I'm working towards FI, maybe I'm on a 5 or a 10-year plan. From the construct that I've created where I've already slashed all my expenses, I've done everything there, my income's good, so I'm happy with that. I've got a savings rate pretty high, and maybe I'm on this 5 to 10-year path. If I, in the background, can create a side hustle that is producing enough income and I love it, that can then decrease the amount of money before I hit my FI date. And I would maybe call that 5.5, right? Halfway there, but you're enough of the way there that with the additional income you're bringing in from your passion, you are willing to take the risk and pull the trigger a little bit sooner on executing your game plan. And then the final subset of people that benefit from the side hustle, people that are post-FI, and now they have all this time that they've freed up because they have this monster portfolio that is fulfilling all of their needs to keep the lights on and provide shelter, cover all of their expenses. They have time. And so now they're able to fully invest their energies into a side hustle if they want to, just for the sheer enjoyment of learning new skills, trying something new, seeing what works. And so I view those as three very distinct models, but all three of those scenarios will benefit from this conversation. The other thing is that financial independence in the FI community, this is not an American concept. This is an international concept that has the ability to transform lives all around the world. And it's not for one socioeconomic class. It's for low income, middle income, high income. Everybody can benefit from this because at the end of the day, what Brad says it's all about is pursuing your passion, finding out what you get excited about. And if you get excited about something, why not at least explore whether or not there's a way to earn some money from it? Because it's fun. There's no reason not to give it a shot. So I think everybody benefits from financial independence and everybody benefits from this conversation, this parallel storyline, and should really consider whether or not there's room in their life for a side hustle.
And Alan, I'd love to hear how you and PopUp Business School are trying to educate not just England, but the larger world, and not just middle-class people, but people all across the economic spectrum. I think you have some pretty exciting things going on. I'd love for you to chat about it.
So the goal of our business was always to help people that need it the most. That was always our aim. And actually, there's quite a lot of support out there for people who are wealthy and doing quite well and all the rest of it. But the people who need it the most didn't always have the support they needed. So we have always been able to find the money to be able to give our courses away for free to the people who need it the most. No one has ever paid to come on a PopUp Business School. We have always found sponsorship through councils, through governments, through corporate sponsors, through housing associations to give us the cash to give the courses away for free. And we go to, that's why we designed the PopUp Business School, was we would go to the areas that need it the most to help start businesses. And we've been doing it all across England. We've got the first one ever in the States, will be in September. And actually, Mr. Money Mustache has helped us pull that together. So very excited to be coming over there and working with him. And we'll be running it at the headquarters of Mustachianism in Longmont in Colorado in September. And our continued plan is to travel around the world helping people to get going. We know that takes a while. So we are actually we've started an online guide 3 weeks ago to building your own business. So if you want to have a look at that at popupbusinessschool.co.uk, you can find an online guide where each week there's a combination of text and video that will help you through the steps you need to take to start up a business. Because I know not everyone can make it to see us physically.
Alan, I love your focus. It's so inspiring to me to see the impact that you're having on the world. There's so much value there for the communities that you're integrating yourself into. And we will be following you and sharing what you're doing with our community as you proceed with this. The other thing that I think is awesome is that there is actually now a headquarters for Mustachianism. And urban legend has it, or urban rumor has it, that he made the roads too small for trucks to fit in. So you can only get there by car or by bike. And the car needs to get at least 60 miles to the gallon in order to be able to go down that road. Is that true, Alan?
I will make sure I cycle to America to meet him.
Yeah, and everyone, we will have links to Alan's website and all the resources he mentioned in the show notes. So be sure to check that out. And you can always get them in your inbox by heading to ChooseFI.com/subscribe. And that way we'll send you out an email every time we publish a new podcast.
All right, Alan. Now I am super excited. You know it's time. Are you ready for the hot seat?
You should be afraid.
I am ready for the hot seat. I've been looking forward to this all day.
In a world drowning in debt and rampant consumption, trapped by the chains of lifestyle inflation, these questions highlight the secrets of those who have broken free. Welcome to the ChooseFI Hot Seat.
All right, Alan, your favorite blog that's not your own.
Now, I was thinking about this. I've loved Mr. Money Mustache, but that's a normal answer that you get because he is so good. I think one that's actually made a really big difference in my life is Tim Ferriss's work. He wrote the 4-Hour Work Week. He wrote the 4-Hour Body and different books. And his blog and his podcast have definitely had an impact on my life, especially actually the interview where he interviewed Arnold Schwarzenegger. There's 2 of those on there. They were fantastic. So that would be my answer. That's had a big impact on my life.
Yeah, Tim Ferriss, I would argue, is the reason why I got into online business and even contemplated doing something different. So yeah, Alan, I'm completely with you there. I would have been toiling away in all likelihood as a tax accountant for the rest of my life. But I came across the 4-Hour Work Week. I've read all his books, listened to every single podcast, many of them multiple times. And yeah, a lot of the skills that I've picked up in life, and frankly, a lot of the things that I'm doing with my life right now are directly because of Tim Ferriss. So Jonathan sometimes wonders why I mention him so often on the podcast, but I just really owe a lot to him. So I completely hear you.
Absolutely. He helped me lose 80 pounds in weight as well. So I would recommend his stuff.
Wow. Yeah, the 4-Hour Body is a brilliant book. I absolutely got a ton of value out of that. And I still do a lot of the exercises that I find in there and go back to it pretty often just to pick up new things.
Absolutely.
You know, I spend a lot of time talking and saying things like, you don't know what you don't know until you do. And while I think that Brad and I spend a massive amount of time exploring that within the very focused lens of FI, Tim Ferriss takes that to the next level on everything else. And as I'm able to free up a little bit more time, but at the same time be very compelled by the idea of finding out all these little things that I don't know, I find his information more and more valuable. So I am getting a kick out of that as well. I have followed suit and started listening to a few of the podcasts. I'll definitely check out the Schwarzenegger one though. Question number 2, your favorite article of all time?
So this is one that absolutely changed the way I looked at marketing and business. It's by a guy called Kevin Kelly, and it's called 1000 True Fans. And the basic concept is any individual as an artist, a creator, if they can find their 1,000 true fans, they can build a business that will feed them for the rest of their lives. And it just shifted the way I looked at lifestyle businesses, side hustles and everything like that, and suddenly broke it down to an achievable target of building up your customers and your base and then selling them things that they love. And it's a short article that is well worth a read.
Well, I think you already had 1,000 true fans, but you definitely added 2 more today. So you can put Brad and I are solidly in the Alan Donegan camp.
I love you guys too.
And Alan, what's funny is as you were saying that, you said marketing and then by a guy called, and I'm literally mouthing the words, Kevin Kelly. I knew you were going there. That is such an impactful article. And that's one I was introduced to by Tim Ferriss. Surprise, surprise. That's a wonderful article. And it's about establishing that tribe of people who you've built up trust with. It's what we've talked about this entire episode, right? It's networking on a real level, getting those 1,000 people who believe in you, trust what you have to say, and will follow you anywhere. And to your point, you can feed yourself for the rest of your life if you have those 1,000 true fans.
Absolutely. And if you focus on adding value to their lives, the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah, 100% agreed. All right, Alan, question number 3, your favorite life hack.
So actually, this one, I love traveling to the States, especially when the dollar to pound rate is good, which is not so good at the moment because we're having a few problems with our government. But back in the day, it was $2 to the pound. And I would travel out to see you in America, and it was like everything was on 50% sale. Jeans were so cheap, clothing was so cheap. I would travel to America and I would stock up on clothing, and it was incredible. And that was my opening foray into the world of geo arbitrage, which is where the money you earn is worth different amounts in different countries. So when I travel. Like we went to Ecuador November last year, and the money we earn in England is worth 20 times as much in Ecuador. And the money you earn in your different countries can then be used to leverage to get an even different lifestyle, or a cheaper lifestyle or a different lifestyle in a different country. And Jim Collins really hit me with this when he was saying the only true security in life is flexibility. So if the market takes a dip and you don't have as much money coming in, well, move to Thailand for a year. It'll half your expenses. And using that combination of geo arbitrage and things being cheaper in different countries and your money being worth different amounts at different times, that gives you true flexibility of purchasing power. And that has changed the way I look at things, and I'm sure will change where I operate and how I operate in the future. And
I'm sure most of our audience picked up on that right away. But for the rest of us, the fact that you are at FI frees you up to get that flexibility, because your income is no longer tied to a job. It's now coming from your portfolio, or it's coming from your side hustle, or it's coming from one of these other income streams that you've created. So you have that flexibility to make decisions like that. And I think that goes back to the fully funded lifestyle change that we talked about with Slowly Sipping Coffee. It's incredibly powerful. And I think, honestly, Brad, we need to make it a priority to get a solid geo arbitrage episode under our belt within the next 6 months.
Yeah, I agree entirely. That sounds like a quality episode for sure.
Question number 4, your biggest financial mistake.
My biggest financial mistake was actually when I was about 21 years old. I made a lot of money at college through side hustles, selling shirts and selling tickets and different things, and I did quite well. I earned more at college than I did in my first full-time job. And I built up sort of £7,000, $10,000 worth of savings, and I followed my dad's advice and invested it into a high-risk, high-tech managed fund. And I did that just before the dot-com bubble burst. And my £7,000 changed to being worth £1,000 overnight.
Ouch.
And it never recovered. And I look back, I should have invested in a house. I should have invested it in an index fund and I wouldn't have had the same problems, or I just shouldn't have sold. I didn't sell for sort of 3 or 4 or 5 years afterwards, but it just never recovered because it was actively managed. So they didn't just leave it there to bounce back. They kept buying and selling and it never recovered.
That's such a great point.
And that put me off investing in stocks and shares till mid-30s. So 12 years I missed out on investing in stocks and shares because I'd been scared off by that experience.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think that's such a valid point that when you're in index funds, you are actually buying and holding. But when you're in an actively managed fund, even though you yourself are willing to stay the course, right? Because you're going to hang in there for 3 to 5 years, the active management isn't. They can't do that. They're not willing to do that. And so they're making the trades. And so you can never, you're right, you can never recapture.
Yes, and they never bounce back. And these people are buying and selling and do the best they can. But actually, they're doing the exact opposite of what they should be doing if they were to really look after your money.
I think that's just such a great point. Buy and hold doesn't exist in an actively managed fund.
Exactly.
Alan, the last question is, what is the advice you would give your younger self?
There's so much advice I would give my younger self. I was a mess when I was younger. I needed so much help. I would have loved to have had you guys when I was younger. If we could have drafted you in 20 years ago, that would have been perfect. But the advice I would give myself, I'd go bigger and I'd go faster. I was so timid and shy when I was younger, and I didn't put myself out there. I didn't take action. I didn't make things happen. And I think the biggest one, if there's one thing, it's learn more from an early age. Read, study, learn, listen to podcasts, go to courses. If I could tell myself to do that from age 18, the difference it would have made in my life. Every book I read and I implement the stuff has a dramatic impact on my life. Every course I go onto and I implement it, every podcast I listen to and I implement it, makes such a difference. The advice for me as I was younger, learn, and implement, and you will make progress.
Yeah, that is so powerful. And I talked about that message earlier, always be giving. I have a pivot on that, and mine is not going to be ABG. It's going to be ABL. Always be learning, and start soon and start early, and then take action with those steps. And that is where I wish I had put my energy as a 10-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-old. I wish that I had cared more about learning and less about what my peers thought about me.
Absolutely. And if you learn, you implement, you learn more from implementing, and you'll get better it every time.
Okay, Alan, so before we go, we kind of like to close by just setting this up. You have actually agreed to come on the show and be an in-house expert for all things side hustle related, especially in the context of our FI community. And one of the things that we would like to do is make sure that people know how to get in touch with you. So what's the best way to reach you?
The best way to reach me is the popupbusinessschool.co.uk website, or just email me, alan@popupbusinessschool.co.uk, or carrier pigeon, text message. I'm open to coffee, cake, anything you like.
I like the carrier pigeon. Do you have a great service in mind for that, or do we need to build that business?
Let's build the business.
All right. Alan, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your ideas with us, sharing your passion with us. And to our community, we have a very big giveaway coming this Friday. So stay tuned for the Friday Roundup. This conversation is not over. As you know, Brad and I love to come back to these conversations year round. You saw how much potential there is here. You saw how many different options there are. And you saw how inspiring it was to see someone with a problem find a solution, an unorthodox solution. And we feel that this, just like the concept of financial independence, the concept of the side hustle, has the ability to transform lives at every level. And so Alan is going to be announcing a super huge giveaway on the Friday Roundup this week. Stay tuned for that. The fire is spreading, my friends, and we'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.
You've been listening to ChooseFI Radio Podcast, where we help middle-class America build wealth, one life hack at a time.